What if I told you that in true Grey's Anatomy fashion, Season 22, Episode 7 didn't just put one life on the line, it put three, and made us believe even for a moment that Joe Wilson might not make it out alive. Because that's exactly where Skyfall begins. No slow warm-up, no easing back into Grey Sloan. We're dropped straight into chaos, fear, and that familiar Grey's feeling that something precious could be taken away at any second. Jo is unconscious. Her heart is failing. Her newborn twin daughters are fighting complications in the NICU. And for Link, this episode becomes less about being a doctor and more about learning how to survive powerlessness. The winter premiere picks up immediately after the devastating mid-season finale cliffhanger. Jo's emergency C-section saved the babies, but nearly killed her in the process. Her heart gives out during surgery, leaving Winston to make life-or-death decisions in seconds. When the dust settles, Link is left standing in the wreckage, his wife unconscious, his daughters fragile, and the future completely uncertain. For most of the episode, Jo doesn't move. She doesn't speak, she doesn't wake up. And that silence is deafening. Instead, we live inside Link's fear. Chris Carmack delivers one of the most emotionally raw performances of his entire run on the show. This isn't the optimistic guitar-playing ortho-god we've known for years. This is a man who has survived a hospital explosion, watched colleagues die, lost control of his body, and now may be losing the love of his life all while becoming a father to twin girls who need him more than ever. One of the most heartbreaking beats comes when Jo's condition worsens to the point where a heart transplant is actually discussed. Let that sink in. A heart transplant. For Jo Wilson. Grey's doesn't threaten that lightly. And while Jo fights silently, Link spirals outward, snapping at Teddy and lashing out at the people around him. Not because he's cruel, but because he's terrified. Then comes the moment that defines the episode. Link, a man who openly admits he doesn't have much faith, finds himself alone in the hospital chapel. No surgeons, no monitors, no medical solutions. Just fear. And it's here that Richard Webber, facing his own mortality after a prostate cancer diagnosis, offers something no medicine can. Perspective. Richard tells Link that faith doesn't have to mean believing in miracles. Sometimes it just means trusting the people around you. Trusting Jo. Trusting the doctors. Trusting that even in the worst moments, you're not alone. And somehow, that conversation lands exactly where it needs to. Because the tide begins to turn. In the NICU, one of the twins previously sedated due to an aortic defect finally urinates. It sounds small, almost ridiculous. But in neonatal care, it's everything. It's proof the treatment is working. Proof her kidneys are functioning. Proof that this baby might actually survive. Link's reaction says it all. This is the first good news he's had in what feels like an eternity. The first moment of hope. The first crack of light through the darkness. And then the moment we've all been waiting for. Link is called back to Jo's room, fully expecting the worst. Every time he's left a room lately, something terrible has happened. He walks in braced for heartbreak, only to see Jo's eyes flutter open. Jo wakes up. No dramatic speech, no long monologue, just life, breath, presence, and in that moment, everything changes. 3 lives were hanging in the balance, and all 3 survived. But Skyfall isn't just about Jo and the babies. Grey's never is. Elsewhere, sparks quietly fly between Lucas and Bailey's friend Katie. What begins as a simple medical errand turns into something deeper after their car breaks down. Over chemo meds, rom-coms, and a spontaneous trip to see houseboats. These two form a connection rooted in honesty, vulnerability, and emotional presence. Whether it becomes romantic or stays a tender friendship, something real is clearly forming. Meanwhile, the intern's no-sex pact officially implodes. Simone gives in to temptation with Wes in a classic Grey Sloan hookup. Jules faces emotional whiplash after seeing Winston with another woman. And Quan learns the hard way that assumptions don't equal relationships, even when flowers are involved. And then there's Teddy and Owen communicating, being transparent, and showing what might actually be. Growth, it's subtle but noticeable. By the end of episode 7, Grey's Anatomy reminds us why it's lasted over 2 decades. Because no matter how many times it breaks our hearts, it always understands something fundamental. Survival isn't just physical. It's emotional. It's relational. And sometimes it's as simple and as miraculous as waking up. So the real question isn't whether Jo and her babies survived. It's what this near tragedy will change forever. Because after Skyfall, nothing for Jo, Link, or Grey Sloan will ever be the same.